So I want to begin by asking you how your time's been away from football, retiring and going into a different role back at Switzerland. How has that been for you?
Well, to be fair, I think the transition was quite smooth. I always thought about like the ending, if that sounds right. But during my career, I always thought like it's good if you have a plan towards the end of your career to make sure that it's not like from 100% to 0% from one day to another. Um, so my transition was quite smooth. I went to the under 21s here in Basel. I got I got offered a contract where I'm half player, half coach kind of thing. So that gave me that smooth transition from being a top professional and playing train every day to also look the other side or learn how the other side works as well. So the insights were important to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And was the aim always to go back to Switzerland after playing in England?
Yeah, I would say so. I always wanted to do the pro license or the licenses with the FA, with the English FA, because I thought like um, the talks we had with the FA, with the British FA, were always fantastic. It was really honest and open, and that's why I decided to do all the batches, the coaching batches over there. But I knew that for my family, it would be best to come back to Switzerland first, and then from there we can then decide if we want to go again or if we want to stay now.
What are the differences between Switzerland and England? You mentioned the emphasis on doing your education in England. Is there any differences that you can relate to based on that knowledge and expertise that you've gained so far?
To be fair, it's also has also to do with the comfort zone. I think doing a batch in a language that isn't your mother language is always a good thing for yourself. So it gets you out of your comfort zone. And on the other hand, I played 8 years almost in the UK, and I always felt home in the UK wherever I've lived. So I think that's just a way of, like, giving a bit back as well, I could say, like, on the other hand, I think the FA did the effort to bring me in and ask me if I wanna do it with them, with the English FA, and then on the other hand, the Swiss FA didn't do that, so that's why I also decided, to go that pathway because I felt like, um, there is a bit more emotion, a bit better relationship, with the UK FA.
Mm. Do you have a sense of intrinsic drive doing your role at Basel just for the fact that you kind of came through the system there early in your career?
Basel for me is like, we all have our club that we support throughout life, and I think Basel is one of the clubs that are for me very important because I grew up here. It's where I come from. It's you call it like a club from my heart or of my heart, and that's why I probably always wanted to give something back to the club. Now, how much this is going to be in the end, we don't know. But at the moment, I have a role here where I'm like a talent manager slash defensive coordinator slash scout, and I can look into different areas in the club. I can talk to people that I think I can gain a lot of knowledge and I can learn and yeah, that's for me very important to develop as a person now. And I think when when you've been a football player, the problem is when you then go to like a normal job or you go out of the football world, it's always like you redefine yourself. So you're not the footballer anymore. So you're a different guy now. So you're a different person. Although people will always um, talk to you in that, yeah, you've been a football player or you're still a football player when it's fresh. And this redefinition of yourself, I think this is the challenge, and this is what I like the most. Yeah,
Let me bring you back to your early days then, Tim. So we mentioned that element of wanting to give back. When was there a moment during your early stages where you realised you were good at football and you mentioned that system the system you went through at Basel? Was there a kind of a moment when you can reflect back on your career and you thought, okay, I can make this as a potential career?
To be totally honest, it was quite late because I I guess you heard about my stories when I was young, when when alcohol and smoking weed and stuff like that was like part of my development as well. But I think like everyone goes through these phases when you're a teenager, and then when you hit puberty, that you start to do things or try things that you shouldn't, but still, it's a normal thing. Um, and during that time, I wasn't quite sure if I'm gonna be a football player because I wasn't quite sure if I want to be a football player. So I always had that in the back of my head that football is kind of like associated to fun rather than it's like a business or it's a work. So football for me was always fun up until like 18, 19 when I got offered my first contract. And then from there it was pretty much like the focus changed so much that I said, like, you have to focus on this now. You give yourself like 2 or 3 years. If it happens, very good. If not, then you go back and study. And I always wanted to do architecture, um, but as I said, I it was too professional then. The trainings and the times were too hard to then do something on the side as well.
You mentioned the element of alcohol and distraction and kind of finding out what you want to do. And I think identity comes within that as well. Was there a moment where you had a bit of an epiphany of, okay, let's try and proceed further with this skill that I've got and try and make it? And was there anyone that influenced you and supported you on that journey early in your career?
To be honest, first I tried to do it on my own, which was a big mistake. I think you can't do it on your own because there are too many factors coming in. And the problem is that because you have this feeling of you have to do it on your own and there are no you shouldn't show weaknesses and stuff like that, you kind of get lost in it. And I think that's also why I drank a little bit, or I smoked a few things. And when I got a clear head, when I had great discussions with my dad. I remember with my dad, or my mom. Your parents are normally the people that support you the most. And my dad was very critical at that time because as you all know, or as we all know, when you hit puberty, you know best, or you know everything. um, but then I had a very good chat with my dad, and then that almost like brought me back into that like thinking of like I really want to do this now. I go for that route, I go for that path, and I'm putting everything on the side, and then concentrate completely. And then obviously I had some great chats with the academy director, with my mom as well. But um, I think my dad, when I was 16, that was when I was 16, I think that helped me the most. And then I um I s- I started a relationship with a young lady, and she became my wife, and we're together now for 20 years, and she has been there for me ever since, and she has been my anchor, my rock. And I think that's also something we have to really, really think about, to who is your partner and who is that rock on your side. And she knows me in and out, and she knows how to tweak things if you want to get the reaction out of me, and like bad or good. But I also know that there is someone on my side that supports me throughout.
Just on that, then, Tim, what is the hardest part of being a footballer?
Knowing how, but I don't know. I think you learn to be a professional football player, meaning like you start to eat the right things, you sleep well, your training schedule, you adjust everything towards that, like being ready on the day. But I think something that a lot of football players do not think, or we do not tell them enough, is how can you trust a person, and how can your friends be a big influence on how you are on and off the pitch. um I mean, we have a lot of examples. If we watch Deli Ali, who get through the ranks quite young, and he's one of the prospects and one of the big talents in the UK, and then all of a sudden he has that downfall, and then you think about, all right, who was on his side that time? who influenced him. And I think a lot of football players or people in general forget that the influence that are around you are so decisive of how you are going to act or react in situations. And if you have people who are always um, saying yes and you should do it and you're the best and blah blah blah, then this won't get you anywhere. I think you need those like realists and the critics to just put you back and bring you back down to earth, even when it's going very well. I think you need to find that balance.
Mm. Your transition away from Basel ended up playing in the Bundesliga with Wolfsburg. Can you talk to me a little bit about that and how you dealt with that as a player as well as a person? And you mentioned those support systems that you had in place to help you earlier in your career. Were they useful there in that practice?
Yeah, they are useful, but again, I went to Germany and I thought I am doing it on my own. And my wife was still studying English literature and media economics, so I was like, I knew that for the next, I don't know, 4 to 6 years, she's not going to be there. Depending on what she wanted to achieve, if she want to go for a doctor title or not. And in the end, she did a lot of things. So she's the brain in our relationship. But yeah, I mean, I went there alone on my own. I had to deal with a lot of things in the beginning because when you get there in the beginning, everything is fine, and you will drive through everything very smoothly, and it's almost like it's on autopilot, and you don't think about like any distractions because you're so focused on on like the new surrounding. And then all of a sudden your first bad game comes, and then the first week of bad training sessions, and then not being selected for the first 11, not being selected in the squad. And then the mental things start to get into your brain, and you start to overthink situations. And this is where I think we can support young footballers more often, because these are the moments where they're alone, and then these are the moments where I think you make a lot of mistakes as a young players. I stopped eating the right things. I stopped like sleeping well, and all these kind of things that are important as a football player. And then going through this transition, how to deal with the situation like this on your own, but also have like the support. And how do you talk to your support? Like, do you tell them everything, or do you give them just the good things, and the bad things you keep for yourself? So, it's like it stacks, the bad things are getting bigger, bigger, bigger until you explode. Um, so I think it was fantastic for my personality and for my character to grow because of the mistakes I made, because of the experiences I had, and also like learning how to communicate with my people.
And just on Wolfsburg as a club during that period, quite successful. What do you think that was down to, based on the leadership and management model and the infrastructure there? Is there a justification on why they were successful at that period compared to where they are now?
There's always a team that will fight for the championship when there is an investor in the back who invests a lot of money into the club. And I think when you look at the situation we had, we won the cup, we finished second behind Bayern, and we were financially quite solid, I would say, because VW, the big car company, was behind us, and they were not afraid to invest money. And I think even now after Corona, this is one of the biggest questions in world football. Which club has no depth, and which club is financially so stable to actually go for good players, or develop with those players as well, without like seeing time as like a problem. Some of the clubs, they think like, okay, we have to bring in young players, they have to develop as fast as possible, and then we sell them for 10 million. But Wolfsburg was like so solid that we were able to bring in very good players like a Kevin De Bruyne, even Perisic, or even a Dante from Bayern Munich, the centre back. And then bringing in some young players like Maximilian Arnold, who's still there, who's the captain now there. And the mix was then fantastic because we have experience, and then we have young, and then we have those middles where you go like, okay, in which direction are they going? Are they like going to be like the leaders of tomorrow, or if they drop off, we can then hope that one young player gets through. I think that the mixture at Wolfsburg was quite good actually, how they planned everything.
And what was your biggest lesson from that time in Germany?
For patience, because you had the problem is that you have a lot of good players for two positions, or like center backs now. But I guess it would have been the same if you play midfield or striker. So because the quality was so high of the players, and we almost like we knew that we make each other better. I think patience was the one that like sometimes gets lost, because then you play a game and then maybe it has nothing to do with your how you played the game. It's just because they want to make sure that you're fit for maybe the next 3 games, and you get one game rest, and being patient and wait for that right moment rather than just want everything, that instant gratification kind of thing where you want everything right now. I would say this is something I learned the most.
And that opportunity to come to England, Norwich City, did you know much about the club before you made the move to East Anglia?
My agent used to play there, so I knew a few things. I also had the offer from other clubs in the UK, but I thought like just the city and how the club is run, that just made sense for me, and it had a lot to do with my values as well as a person. I think when I met Delia, then that just made actually my decision like pretty much sure that I'm going to go there, because Delia was just, even her husband Michael, they were just amazing. And this family um feeling, you don't get this. I don't think you get this very often in football, and that's why I felt so home in Norwich as well, and the fans. And I think that's why I loved to play for the club, even though I had like a difficult period after the first 6 months. But even afterwards, if I think about Norwich, I feel home, like almost. So I don't know how many players can say that, of a football club.
Mm. And in terms of playing in Switzerland and obviously playing in Germany, the English league, is there any differences that you can relate to based on that experience?
The physicality, the pace, obviously is so much higher in the UK, even in the Championship. I think we we all don't know how good the Championship really is. I think if you look at the top 5 leagues in the world, I think the Championship isn't too far off, um, because you have so many games. You have a lot of load. You have different games, from like playing style games to just kicking long the old English way, and it's fantastic because it gets you out of your comfort zone. You have to think about as a football player. If you play Premier League, you know that you know exactly what's going to come. You know exactly what the quality is going to look like. And I think in the Prem it's in the end, I think it's down to condition and the mental aspect. I think if someone is like mentally stronger than you, or like faster in the head, I think they will always win the game, because I think technical ability and tactical ability, everyone has got that now, from League One or even lower to the Premier League. Everyone knows exactly what to do. I mean, we have Pep and everyone around that gives you perfect examples, and you could do like a copycat and just take these tactics. So in the end, I think it's really down to like the mental fitness and the condition of it.
Mm. And just on that then, Tim, who's maybe the toughest opponent you've come across in terms of maybe team or even maybe striker? I'm just interested on that because it's interesting how you mentioned the mental capacity seems to be the kind of the fine lines to the high end of professional sport.
It's hard, it depends on what you're looking for. If you go for like a complete physical fight in the game, you have your Lukaku's, you have Hulk, you have Andy Carroll for example. I thought like he was very strong and very difficult to deal with. We had Rondon at West Brom, um, Lewandowski, obviously very strong, very good. Harry Kane. There are a few like players like that where you knew exactly that they won't run you away, but they are just like physically you will be in a fight this game, and you have to be on your best to, or you have to, I don't know, do 10 push-ups before you go out to actually maybe be close to pushing them down, or they will push you down anyway. But and then you have the other aspect where you know exactly there will be players who technically they will be better than you, and in the brain they might be faster. So you have to be on your best as well in the head, like a Neymar, for example, Hazard, um, these kind of player. I was unlucky that I wasn't playing against Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. These were players I had to watch from the bench, but still, like watching them again, the best of the best, just to see how fast they are in the head.
And obviously, we joked then around, doing push-ups to physically get better within the process of preparing. But how does one prepare for such game if you're going in knowing that there's going to be a physical battle or you're up against world-class, outstanding players? What does that look like for you? Do you kind of have a process that, or maybe a match day ritual that supports that competencies going into the game?
I mean, I had my normal ritual before every game. What I've done was like the day before or the night before, I watched some clips of the strikers, and I watched how they scored without contact to the defenders, with contact to defenders. What happened when they were like in an infight? What happened when they got space and time? And I almost made like a plan for myself to, this is how I'm going to deal with the situation today. And sometimes it was wrong. Like I thought when I played against Aguero, for example, I thought it was right to give him a bit space and then go and attack rather than like being tight towards him, because he knew exactly how to roll and use his first touch. Um, but then in the game, it wasn't the right decision, and then I had to adapt, obviously, during the game. So yeah, you make a plan. I wouldn't call it a master plan, but you have an idea of how you want to approach the game, and then in the game you might have to adjust to different scenarios.
And do you have any superstitions based on football? Do you have a process that might impact certain outcomes?
Tying the boots left first, so socks left first. All these kind of things. So yeah, it's a left. My left side is like very dominant when it comes to everything. I almost have the feeling that I have to do everything with the left side first. And then you add different things with like I have a necklace, uh, obviously, and this was very important to me. I couldn't play a game without my necklace
Okay.
on, so I had to do the warm up with the necklace, and then the necklace had to hang in a certain way in the dressing room. And if that wasn't the case, I would struggle in the game. Just I don't know why, but well, it happened maybe twice.
And what's the necklace? Is it religious? Is it or
Oh yeah, I got it from my aunt, and it was like it was just a bit, yeah. The Pope put holy water over it, and yeah, so it means a lot to my aunt, and obviously and it means a lot to me as well, because family for me is number one.
yeah. Are you religious yourself? Do you find faith in certain things that might relate to your practices within football to have that sense of belief and drive?
It's a difficult conversation. I think I am, but I also think I am not, because I had like a priest in Norwich. I had a very good relationship with him, and I love to chat with him, because he had like a different view of things again. Um, and for me, it was just I don't know, death and life and everything. If things are getting into perspective, it can change your point of view, and that's why I think I believe, but I also think like sometimes I'm not the biggest believer. So I won't go to church on a Sunday or anything like that, but I still believe that I think there is a higher power, But I also respect like other religions as well, and I also read a lot of like Buddhism. I read a lot about Muslims, and because I just think it's very important to be open minded and like look at all the angles there are in the world to maybe understand why a person acts like that. But even like if you look at the Ramadan
Yeah.
and players uh, being or trying to be on their best during that time, so it's yeah, it's easy to say, well, you shouldn't, you should just eat something and then you have the energy, but you don't think about the religious background of why they are doing it. And I think this is just it gets you a wider mind of looking at things.
Mm. Absolutely. Considering a lot of the politics that are happening in the world today, I suppose that's more useful than ever. And I always think football's a microcosm of society as well. So you get a lot of things that transpire within society and it kind of creeps into football, whether that's professional players, fandom, etc. So it's kind of good to be aware of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, this is the problem. Football can be a release, but it can also be very hard on yourself if you are too much focused on like little things. If you're like a massive fan of a football club and they do not like play how you wish they played on the weekend, and you had a bad week anyway. So this can really kill your week. And then you're just angry at that one person because he made a mistake in a game where you went in with a bad mood anyway, and then you
Yeah.
project everything you had during that week. You project on that one player, and then this is, I think, how the social media and the commenting on the posts are getting worse or bad in a way where we don't look at the whole picture. We just look at that one situation at one time. And so yeah, UK, I think, was the best example was like England in the Euro final when Saka and Rashford when they missed the penalty. Oh, oh, Sancho, sorry. And this is something, and I don't even believe that everyone was is a racist. I think it was just a moment. When you're so emotionally and you wish something so bad and then it won't happen. But again, this is something that can't happen, and this is where a lot of footballers, people are always asking for why do they give like these uh these boring interviews, why do they, you know why don't they, why are they not honest to us, like kind of. But again, if you look back, things happen in football, and players, they need to make sure that they are in a safe place, and they won't give you anything to attack on, and that's why the interviews are sometimes boring, and it's just to protect the football player.
Mm. If I bring you back to Norwich, Tim, Daniel Farke, what was your relationship like with him?
um it was really good. Obviously he spoke the same language, but I think he brought my football to another level again, just because he wanted something from me outside of the football world that, like, I haven't developed at the time. And I think when I started to develop it with his help, and I felt more comfortable, and I was getting, like, slowly pushed into that leader role, and I became a better person again and a better football player. So I had a great relationship with him, and I thank him a lot for a, a few things in my life. Yeah.
Mm. You mentioned understanding or speaking the same language and maybe understanding things culturally. Did you think that helped you in terms of your development knowledge that the manager understood maybe some of the things that you've experienced from your upbringing and how that might align with your playing career?
Yeah, yes, but I also was able to help him, to be accepted in the dressing room, and to actually the weekly plan or the training schedule was different to the UK schedule. I would say the German way of how we train or how we prepare for a game is different than the UK way. So this is also important that you have like players in the team that support you when something is maybe not accepted yet, and I think I was able to help him there as well, and that's why I think we were such a great mix, or couple, because we were able to get everything, or we were able to get the best out of the players because they accepted the new way. Um, and this is also where he brought me into. I always talk about the boat, like rowing in the same direction, and he was the one who's giving us the rhythm, and obviously there is one guy who needs to start, and then the rest will follow. So um, we did a great job at Norwich, and everyone followed, and we had great discussions there in the dressing room. They were always honest, and it was good communication. Yeah.
You mentioned good discussions in the dressing room. Was there ever a moment where players maybe challenged the manager based on some of the things that are happening on the pitch? Or I'm just interested on that communication because traditionally you might think that managers have the last say, but probably more recently, more open dialogue is more relevant.
No, he was like, listen, he was quite open, even when mistakes were made. I think obviously there was a bit of a punishment, but then when it was something really bad, or when he thought like this is going to interrupt the team spirit, then he changed something. And I remember when he came in, we had a situation with Russell Martin, for example, where we all were shocked because he was not our captain anymore. He was not playing for us anymore from one day to the other, and um, we were quite shocked because Ross is a very good guy, and he was a good football player. And these decisions are hard to accept at times, but um, yeah, we he had a good way of of communicating to the team why he did it, and this is final, so there is no way he's gonna change that back.
And who were you close friends with at your time at Norwich? Is there anyone that you still keep in touch with today?
I mean, Christoph Zimmermann was pretty. Yeah, he was probably one of the closest. Ivo Pinto when I came. But there is a lot of players. Grant Hanley, I had a good relationship with him. James Madison, I always felt like James and I we had a special relationship because he listened to me, and I tried to help him as much as possible to to get from Norwich to like the big stage. And it's not because of me that he's where he is now, but maybe it's 1%, and that would make me happy. But this is something I was always keen on, helping young players to make a better career than I had. This is just in my head. Because I want to help, and I think it's important that we help the young players to develop.
Did you always see that potential in Madison in terms of making it to that elite high end level?
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of these young talent players. Marcus Edwards was one. I think James, then Ben Godfrey, the Murphy brothers, just to name a few. And you always thought like the potential is there, you want to help them, but then in the end, they had to make their own decisions, and find their own way. So again, you're maybe 1% of 100, or maybe five. I don't know.
You mentioned Grant Hanley. He signed for my team Birmingham in January actually. It's good.
Yeah,
Yeah. So he's a good player, Scottish international.
yeah, he's a great guy. He's a good character to have around as well. He's because he's just honest as well with you. And the discussions we had in the training room, sometimes we were like going after each other on the pitch, but then as soon as you were in the dressing room, discussions then like were so much like based on like truth and respect, mutual respect. So I yeah, I had a great time with him. He's a great player
Hmm.
and person.
And Norwich, yeah, and Norwich's fan base, strong support there. Carrow Road sold out week in, week out. Good relationship with the fans there, Tim.
This is something the fans have to answer. From my point of view, I have to thank them because, as I said, I had a time where I wasn't playing on my best, and they always supported me. Um, and I almost had the feeling that I have to give something back all the time. So I my relationship with the fans, I think, is very good. It's just because I love how they are, very passionate, and they can give you a lot if they are on your side, obviously.
What is the song this? Is it "On the Ball City"? Is that their anthem when you play?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Apparently that's
OTBC.
yeah, apparently that's the oldest football song in history,
Yep.
apparently. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious. I was just curious. I thought you might have been inspired by it, Tim.
Oh, I think it's been the halftime speech of Delia, the "Let's Be Having You." That was quite fun as well. No, but again, I think the whole surrounding was just was fantastic.
Mm.
It's the stadium as well. It's like compact. It's loud. It's you get a lot out of it. So I loved it. Not only because I scored the equalizer against Ipswich in that one game, but
Did you enjoy those derby games in terms of playing against Ipswich and those big games in the Championship?
it was fantastic. It was really great because it was a different situation. There was pressure. There was like you knew that you don't want to be that team who loses to Ipswich after I don't know 9 or 10 years. So it was always the tension was quite high, but at the same time, I've just enjoyed every bit. It was just fantastic to play in these games.
If I get you to look at maybe representing Switzerland, then representing them in at the Euros as well as the Olympics, I presume that's a major honour for you in terms of representing your country based on your career at club level, but representing some of the best players in the world, and you mentioned the likes of Messi, Ronaldo, Hazard, etc. In terms of those that were against Switzerland, uh, talk to me about your kind of intrinsic drive, playing in those competitions and supporting the team as a whole.
Oh, but national team is something you can't actually describe, which it brings so much honor to yourself and even to your family if you can represent your country. And I was always extremely proud of wearing the shirt, although I did not play too many games. Actually, I think it was 20 in the end. But um, being part of the team, and I knew that there are better center backs than me in the national team, so I knew where my position is. I knew exactly how I can help the team, and I can support the team that we get the best out of it. And yeah, that's why I always like felt very comfortable to go to the national team without that feeling of now I have to play, and if I'm not playing, I'm not going there anymore. So I knew exactly that there are players who are better than me. I knew how to put myself into that like hierarchy of who is going to play first. So I was just happy to be part of the national team, to be honest.
Mm. Did you like kind of look forward to those international breaks? Did you enjoy the process of coming together with other Swiss players?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My my wife always said like, "Oh no, 10 days with the national team now. When you come back, do you have like that footballer slang again, where you talk, that football language?" So no, I loved it. It was a great time to sometimes bring good things you happened that at the club, you bring them into the national team, but also when you had bad times, you were able to not think about it because you were at the national team. And I think that's why I liked it so much.
Mm. Did you find yourself maybe learning off other players during that process? You mentioned the likes of Granit Xhaka, etc. Did you feel that you could kind of learn off those experiences in the national team and bring it back to your club career?
Yeah, you talk about a lot of things there. You talk about experiences, situations, and then um, you maybe think about and reflect a bit, how would you react in those kind of situation, and if they would happen, what would you do? So I think these conversations as well, they were fantastic, and they will also bring you some insights of how different clubs deal with different situations.
Where do you think the future goes with Swiss football over the next 10 years? Is there anything that you can maybe just inform listeners and viewers on based on the development that you've seen?
I don't want to be too critical now. Um, I think we do have a lot of potential. I don't think we get the best out of the potential at the moment because of how we run things over here. Um, and not only the clubs. I mean, also the national teams. Um, it's a bit concerning that if you look at the tournaments from under 15s to under 21, that no national team is included in any of the Euros this year, or even like World Cups. So this is a bit like something that we have to take very serious, especially because we thought like we have one very good under 21 national team, um, and they didn't make it. So that questions how good are we really, or how good are they really? And these are the next generation of football players. So I think we need to rethink a few things. Um, Not don't get me wrong, we don't need to change the whole system of developing and finding those talents, because I think we are doing a good job in identifying who's got talent. But I think the way of like, from young age to that professional contract, I think you can definitely do a better job, uh, and then always adjust to the time.
What do you think that's down to, Tim, in terms of I know this sounds like the $1,000,000 question, but, is it down to maybe infrastructure? Is it down to maybe alternative sports or the interest in football? Or I'm just interested why that might be apparent within Switzerland.
No, but I think it's more the development, that like football is developing all the time. So think back like 30, 40 years ago, we played with the libero, that one role, that Franz Beckenbauer role, and then it developed from like the pace of the game, the tactics. Uh, I mean, if you look at like the different stages, and you can't stagnate there. You have to develop with the football, and this is when I think when you do not get on that train, or when you miss that like entrance, it's very hard to get back on it. And I think this is where we have to think about like when is the right moment to change something maybe, and rethink our way of developing.
Yeah, it's an interesting process when you think about international football and the cycles. You can relate this to England. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, there was kind of a cycle of a different philosophy and a different agenda. And you can even relate to maybe other smaller countries where they've tried to integrate different systems to try and break that cycle, as you mentioned.
And I mean, England is a very good example. I thought like, when I grew up, England was always a good team with like a lot of good players, but they almost never found the way of like working together. And then they found a way of like selecting the right players who work exactly with each other at the right moment at the right time, and then that's why I think they are as successful as they are at the moment. But now I think they're on that verge of like the next phase of their development. Now, how can we make sure that the young players are stimulated, and how do we get the best out of the old players who influence the young players? And I think this is where, especially in England, I think this is now the $1 million question. So how do you make sure that these talented young players are going to work together for the next, I don't know how many years, but Belgium. Belgium is the best example of how many young, good players you can have, but achieve absolutely nothing.
Could be here all day talking about countries and the philosophies and agenda. Final part, Tim. I just want to ask you, what are your next steps then in terms of your journey? You mentioned your intrinsic drive to give back and your role at Basel. Can you maybe let listeners and viewers have a bit of insight on what your next steps are?
I am I'm a and the problem is I'm an entrepreneur, so I have a lot of ideas. 8 months ago, I started a biotech company, so going into pharmacy, which is so pharmacy and supplementation, which is completely out of my comfort zone. But I think I love it so much. I have a restaurant now on the side as well, which is a business club more than a restaurant, but also something new. I'm on television, being able to do uh, like commentator or punditry, I think they call it.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
you said comedian then.
no, 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 no. The problem is I'm a funny guy, but comedians have to be on that day on the strike. It's difficult, if you stand in front of people. Um, and then obviously with football, I would love to go, in different roles and see the world of football and learn as much as possible to maybe influence the next generation to get through the ranks and create their own name. So, and don't get me wrong, like I had my career and I loved it. I loved every minute of it, and I have no regrets. I stand behind every error or mistake I made. Um, but I want to prevent those mistakes for the young players, and that's why I think now I have to take myself back and look only for the young players and make sure that they are getting through the ranks, and maybe I can help them a little bit on their way.
Did you never think of coaching, Tim? Is that not an option?
Yeah, yeah. Coaching is obviously one thing I think about now because it also gives me a different perspective of things as well. Sporting director would have been my ultimate goal, I guess. But yeah, how do you want to judge a manager if you never managed a team?
Yeah, very true. Tim, we'll end there. Thank you so much for your time and energy. And I just want to wish you well going forward, whether that's in Switzerland or across Europe or even across the world, depending on you mentioned the entrepreneurial role that you've got. You don't know where that might take you, as well as your coaching and football as well. That might take you back to Norwich, the UK, wherever it might be. So good luck, Tim, and thank you for your time and energy.
Thank you very much.